With the riots in France, the West is trying to shape how we feel about Middle Eastern people in very different ways. Now, in France, we're told that Middle Eastern people and Muslims in general are powerless and abused and left to rot in society and mistreated, and thus we have these violent riots. Now, in the US, we're being told that the GOP is weaponizing Muslims against the transgender community as if they have no agency of thought of their own. This piece from former White House spokesperson Jenn Psaki left me nearly speechless.
And the right wing has focused their fear-mongering on trans people. And who better to go after the new enemy than the old enemy? Consider this from 2015.
We cannot be the warehouse of all these, Muslim people coming from these far-flung lands where we're just not going to be able to control who becomes radicalized, who doesn't, because of technology. It's impossible.
Now, if you can believe it, Laura Ingraham is rallying Muslims against books in schools with LGBTQ plus themes.
Us Catholics and other Christians, other people of faith have been waiting for the Muslims to step up on this issue.
In an interview later with Semaphore, Laura Ingraham's guest, who you just saw on the screen, couldn't believe how ironic this all is. He said, quote, 5 years ago, Laura was saying we shouldn't have Muslims in this country. Now she's saying, thank God the Muslims are here. Just to summarize, the right-wingers, the conspiracy theorists, the birthers, they now want us to forget the years they spent fear-mongering about Muslims and Islam. 10 years ago, standing against Sharia law was the key GOP litmus test. Now that litmus test seems to be how fervently you oppose transgender people. Just listen to what Trump himself had to say about that. Even he doesn't exactly know why he's attacking them.
It's amazing how strongly people feel about that. You see, I'm talking about cutting taxes. People go like that. Talk about transgender. Everyone goes crazy. Who would have thought 5 years ago you didn't know what the hell it was?
So what you just heard in that video, that sounds an awful lot like and reminiscent of what George Wallace, a staunch segregationist, once told a newspaper editor. Quote, I tried to talk about good roads and good schools and all of these things that have been part of my career and nobody listened. And then I began talking about Black people and they stomped the floor. So let's be clear. This is the same old GOP playbook, another cynical ploy to tear at the fabric of our society and damage the idea that out of many, we are one, all because they want so desperately to regain the White House.
So in other words, she's saying Muslims can't think for themselves. If you hear them say that they are not supporters of the transgender agenda, they don't mean it. That's just the GOP speaking for them. Here to discuss this propaganda and speak for himself is journalist Kevork Almassian, who is an immigrant from Syria living in Europe. So you have a good perspective about how people from the Middle East are conceived of, how this conversation is shaped for them and not directly from them. First of all, let's talk about the riots, because you spoke out about the French riots, condemning them, but then pointing to the fact that this mass migration is a result of the destruction of these communities. Can you explain that?
First of all, nothing, in my opinion, justifies vandalizing public and private properties. I would be very honest that I wouldn't like to see my cities and my country burning down like it's happening in France. We have a first-hand experience in Syria, how such rioters can abuse the people's demands on the ground. There are so many people who have legitimate demands from the French government, but when you riot and loot and destroy public properties, in my opinion, also private properties, you wouldn't really giving the right impression. Now, there are, from any community that could come to Europe, there are always good apples and bad apples, right? But when during such times, we don't see the good apples coming to the streets and trying to calm down the people, because it's a very dangerous place. And therefore, we see always the bad apples coming to the streets. And this is something we have to address carefully, because when you have an open door policy for migration or for refugees to come to your country, we have to to know that among them, there will be also people who are not really interested to live peacefully in Western societies because their values contradict the values of the West in general, let's say. So when you speak about these issues and when you say, yeah, in our countries, we have also very good people, they can come in Europe or in the United States and they can integrate, but there are also some people that we have to be a little bit careful of, right? But when you say these things, you're categorically and very quickly accused of being a fascist, you're accused of being a self-hating Syrian or self-hating Middle Eastern, etc., etc., etc. I myself, I'm Middle Eastern. I'm a secular person. I believe that all religions and sects should be treated equally. But some communities, in my opinion, they want to have their special status when they come in the Western societies, and that is who is helping this process of creating, for example, ghettos in Western society, Western countries, are the radical left. The radical left says, for example, in Germany, kein Mensch is illegal, which means no person is illegal. So anyone could come to Germany, anyone can bring himself to Germany and come. And my point is, everyone who is eligible to come to Germany, if he's running away from a war, then he's a refugee. He can apply for an asylum, right? If he proves his case. And if he is an economic migrant and he has some sort of skills who can bring something with him, then those are very legitimate cases. People can do this stuff, right? But at the same time, why not checking the background of the people before they arrive here? I'm in Germany for 8 years now, and with my own eyes, personally, I've seen people who were fighters in Syria among the Islamist militants, and they're now walking here in the streets freely. They're getting loans from the banks or living on the taxpayer money of the people who work in Germany, and they're creating troubles. But when you point your finger to these people who are, in my opinion, they're minority, but they are loud and they can cause troubles, right? And when you say that we have to isolate these people or probably check their background with the Syrian government before they arrive here, you are attacked by the media,
human
you're
rights
smeared.
abuse, right?
Yeah,
Yes.
exactly. So even you are not allowed to ask for the deportation of these people from Germany because they say if we cannot send them to Syria because Assad will torture them. This is the official narrative. But that doesn't make any sense for the people living here because if there are, let's say, 10 refugees and one of them commits a horrible, heinous act, and you don't punish these people in the correct way, then the Germans or the local communities here, they do reaction against such acts. If this person is punished, for example, a rapist, how is it possible that the person who rapes a woman here in Germany, who comes from, let's say, an outside country, can only receive 5 years in jail? And we know that there was a gang rape of this woman. This woman's life is over. So it doesn't make sense, in my opinion. Also, the laws and regulations that are applying on the people is also encouraging such theft or such activities in this community. So in my opinion, there should be tougher background checks, and also very importantly to impose the harshest punishment on the people who refuse to act in a civil way. And I'm very careful about this case because I've been already attacked by the German media multiple times for stating these obvious things. But it's very important to isolate the radicals among the good people who are coming from the Middle East, North Africa, from everywhere, right? Because in Germany now we have the number one doctors in Germany. Like we have the Germans, they have the highest number of doctors. The second highest number of doctors are from Syria. And they're all working, and they're around 8,000 doctors. So we have so many good people in Syria that can also we can speak about them. But in this particular case, it's important to really touch the root of the causes, the problem. So there are, of course, radical people living in Germany, and they pretend to be refugees or they receive asylum here.
I think that this leftist narrative assumes that when we say people should be punished for crimes, we are saying their lives are worth less than other people's lives because of their skin color. And my philosophy is that everyone else's life is worth what my life is worth. And so therefore, equal justice under the law is equal. So what we're saying is that if you're a victim of someone of a certain color, we can't speak down about them because otherwise we are assuming that they're worth less than us. It's a complete point system about who's worth what, and
Because
versus
this radical left,
yeah,
because this radical left sees things as clans, as tribes. They see
right.
you only skin color. They see you only as because they divide the communities into vertical lines, and therefore when they do that, they create. They want to use this in electoral successes, because
Yes.
if they say that that Muslims are one community, one color, one shape, one opinion, they can try to manipulate them as one community to vote for their political parties. And you can see
Yes.
this clearly.
Which is what we just saw Jenn Psaki do on MSNBC, saying, you Muslim people, you absolutely don't believe in gender critical philosophy. You want to be accepting to transgender people, but the GOP is telling you you're not, which is a complete denigration of an entire people's belief system, and saying you don't understand your own beliefs.
Because first of all, Jenn Psaki, she doesn't know anything about the Muslim communities as a community, and also she doesn't understand the religion. In my opinion, in Western societies, Christianity has been put on the shelf, right? I
Yes.
understand that. But in among the Muslims, religion plays a very important role. It's a way of life. It's not only a religion that can organize the individual affairs, but also communal affairs, and also the affairs of the community with the state. It's a religion of a state, and a religion of yourself as an individual. And in Islam, for example, this gender identity or whatever they're trying to choke us with their own ideology is forbidden, and it's not something that they can change it. There is no window for Islam to change its texts. So therefore, the Muslim communities will follow what is written in the text. And in the text, this philosophy that the radical left is trying to shove our throats every day, it's against their beliefs. Therefore, when she is trying to say that the GOP or the conservatives or the Republicans are trying to manipulate the Muslim community, she doesn't understand at all that this is becoming a natural alliance now between
Yes.
the Muslim communities and the conservatives, because at the beginning, nobody cares if you, whatever is your sexuality, whatever you're doing in your home or in your private times, nobody cares if you're a Muslim or Christian or any religion. If you belong to any religion, who cares what you do at your private times? But when you go to the street and you're naked, and you're bringing kids, and you're
Right.
doing drag shows, and you're telling children 3, 4, 5 years old that maybe you're not a maybe you're not a girl, maybe you're not a boy, and they're indoctrinating them, including here. We have now the first LGBTQ plus kindergarten in Germany. So people start to thinking like, no, this is too much. You're really crossing the boundaries now, and if we don't stand to any boundaries, then we'll stand for nothing.
Right.
And kids are red line for them, right? Don't come to our kids. Do whatever you want, but don't come for our kids. And I think that's the red line that the Muslims have drawn. And I think the conservatives have come as a natural allies for them, because there is no other people who are standing against them. And rest assured, if there is a necessity for to go to school boards, speak with the teachers and protest, real protesting, is the Middle Eastern community, whether they are Christian or they are Muslims. They are the ones who are gonna oppose this attempt, I would say, to sexualize the kids, which is, in my opinion, very ridiculous.
But the left will take any opportunity to tell minority groups that they are their advocates. It doesn't matter who they are, right?
But they don't tell them that they have become refugees, and also they have become refugees or migrants in these countries because of their policies in the Middle Eastern and North African countries. When these people arrive in Germany or in the United States, they embrace them. They try to tell them that we are tolerant, and they give them job opportunities or scholarships, etc., etc. But nobody says that these people on the left here in Germany, for example, they're the ones imposing sanctions on many Middle Eastern countries,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
And they're creating this economic misery that the people are trying to flee from their own
Right.
countries.
We stand for you here, but your relatives back in Syria who can't get antibiotics, we don't stand for
Let them
them.
vote.
Yeah.
Let them vote.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe, just maybe, this is a way for different communities to understand their common values rather than their differences. If we have an alignment with the Christian community and the Muslim community, and also non-secular people like yourself, that say that kids are a tripwire. This is a red line. We support family values and also the innocence of children. So this is a conversation that would cost a lot of people a lot of power, don't you think?
Yeah, we have to draw a line, in my opinion. This is very, very important. Otherwise, they will try to push further. Every time you accept a new, let's say, an ideology or a new gender that they create every day, they will come something more crazy the second day. As long as you don't set up the red line, they're going to come and push it further and further and further. So it's very important to draw the line now. Secondly, when you draw a line and when you create natural alliances between different people, regardless of their religion, sect, and ethnicity, you are already destroying the attempt of the radical left. And I'm very specific because there are so many good left parties and left-wing people. But the radical left that is trying to create a zombie society, which is based on vertical lines that they consider Latinos as one block, the Muslims as one block, and the Africans as one block, and then deal with them as one static community. Mm-hmm. And when you break that, and when you create natural alliances between these people, regardless of their sect and religion, an entire process in the past 2 to 3 decades, you already broke that, destroyed that process that the radical left was trying to implement and enforce on the people. So this is very dangerous for the radical left, such as Jenn Psaki, that she was like, I watched the video, and to be honest with you, it's very clear that she doesn't know anything about the Muslim community. I'm not sure if she has any Muslim friends. Maybe if she has, they are very liberal like her. But most of the Muslim communities and Middle Eastern communities are very conservative, and they want to preserve their family values. They want to preserve their authority on their kids. Your kids are your kids, not the state's kids. Because remember what Joe Biden said at the beginning of June during the Pride Month, when he was talking about the trans kids, and he said, "We support you. You are our children." What does it mean? We are our children. They are trying now to tell you that you, as a parent, you don't have a say over your children. And if you disagree with our ideology, and it's coming, they're going to regularize, and they're going to impose new laws and regulations, and they will say you're not fit to become a parent, and they will take your children from you if you don't accept their way of life. I'm from Middle East. I was born as a Christian. I want to have a children, and I'm terrified in this society, because if I want to have a children in this society, and if they're going to indoctrinate my kid in the school, and then I will lose my children, it drives you, you lose your sanity, because that's it, because the most valuable thing any person could have is his and her children. And if they can take over your children by hijacking their brain and turning them against their parents, and that's the end, in my opinion, for any healthy society.
This is something I deal with a lot when my children go, say, to a camp or a school trip, and the booklet that they send say children will be separated by gender. I'm like, can we clarify what we mean by gender, that it's biological sex? Because I'm very concerned that my daughter is in a room with children. These kind of things are absolutely haunting when it comes to being a parent at this point. So thank you for offering your perspective on this moment, because again, I feel like a lot of the Western talking points are around talking down to people from the Middle East or talking for them. And I would never want to do that. So thank you for offering your perspective as always. It was fantastic.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you so much for watching this segment here at Redacted. We are live every day at 4 p.m. Eastern Time, trying to share the stories that the mainstream media will not cover. You should also come over and join our community of Redacted Rebels over at redacted.inc. That's our private locals community where we can share exclusive content that we simply cannot share here on YouTube. Come over and join the rebellion together right now by going to redacted.inc. We'll see you next time.